COP30 Climate Summit continues on its second day in Belém do Pará. The U.S. Department of War confirmed a new attack in the Caribbean that resulted in the death of 3 people as part of Washington's aggression in the region under the pretext of a supposed fight against drug trafficking. And Palestine denounces at least 340 attacks by the occupation forces and Israeli settlers against farm workers during the olive harvest. Hello and welcome to From the South. I'm Alejandra Garcia from teleSUR Studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. Brazilian city Belém do Pará is hosting the COP30 Climate Summit on its second day. World leaders and delegations are taking part in this summit ahead of the United Nations COP30 Climate Conference to take place next week in the same city. The objective is to foster agreements on climate action to move into concrete implementation of proposals to counter the climate crisis. Among the countries speaking during this second day are representatives from Iran, Mexico and Venezuela. In this sense, the President of Brazil, Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, spoke about the mechanisms necessary for a process of energy transition in developing countries.
Un proceso justo, ordenado y equitativo.
A fair, orderly and equitable process to move away from fossil fuels demands access to technologies and financing for countries in the global south. There are spaces to explore innovative mechanisms for debt for climate financing and transition to renewable energy. Using part of the revenue from oil exploitation for the energy transition remains a valid option for developing countries.
Sigue siendo un camino válido para los países en desarrollo.
The Venezuelan Foreign Minister Ivan Gil emphasized that the U.S. sent ships to the Caribbean to threaten Venezuela with the intention of appropriating its natural resources.
The voracious and hungry imperialism that, instead of correcting itself to stop climate change, has become more ferocious and inhumane. That imperialism does not send ships to the Caribbean to help repair the damage caused by climate change, but to threaten, besiege, and plunder the natural resources of our sovereign nations, as is the case with Venezuela, which is besieged daily with the sole aim of stealing its resources.
The Palestinian ambassador to Brazil, Ibrahim Al-Sabem, denounced at the COP30 that the Israeli occupation is using hunger as a weapon of war.
Ladies and gentlemen, Gaza faces major problems in terms of public health and the environment, as well as the issue of accreted land, and has also suffered from a food crisis where famine was used as a weapon. We must also address the situation in the West Bank, where Israel is pursuing a policy of appropriating land and building more settlements, as well as threatening water sources. The dangerous situation in Palestine requires urgent international action to protect human beings and the environment.
In this context, the Vice President and Head of the Department of Environment of Iran referred to the environmental implications of the United States' aggression against her country and the ecocide caused by the Israeli regime in Gaza.
The reckless attacks on Iran's peaceful nuclear energy facilities represent a blatant and deliberate crime that could have led to one of the world's largest environmental catastrophes. This act of aggression is alongside with the 2 years ecocide and a variety of war crimes committed by this outlaw regime in Gaza. These crimes were not only a massacre of innocent people, women and children, but also caused deep environmental damage.
Now let's see more details in the following report by our colleagues André Vieira and Sebastián Soto.
The city of Belém awoke to reinforce security for the climate summit, with over 150 foreign delegations in attendance. At the gate of the meeting place, indigenous people, black resistance communities, and fishermen protested to demand direct resources for those who preserve the rainforest. This demand was also supported by those participated in the meeting.
When they tell us that we should look to indigenous peoples, that there can be no COP, that there can be no summit, that there can be no project for a territory without being with those who live in the territory and who are actually in the territory.
As
a prelude to COP30, the Climate Summit aims to define the lines that will be adopted by negotiators during the United Nations Climate Change Conference. Climate justice is an ally in the fight against hunger, poverty, racism, and gender inequality, as well as in the promotion of more representative and inclusive global governance.
2024
was the hottest year in history, exceeding the limit of 1.5 degrees above pre-industrial levels. The first COP held in the Amazon is an attempt to postpone the end of the war in the face of the interest of a political system that puts profit above life. If we stop the atrocities of capitalism in the forests and tropical rainforests, we will be protecting humanity.
Africa,
Asia, Europe, Oceania, the Americas, all were represented, but the absence of the leader of one of the world's most polluting countries was noticeable. The absence of the United States here. The fact that Mr. Donald Trump is not coming, the fact that he personally denies science and is leading his society with his eyes closed towards the abyss, and with it, humanity.
COP30
has just begun, but it already has its first concrete project, the Rainforest Forever Fund, an initiative by Brazil that already has a pledge of $1.5 billion to be allocated to countries that preserve forests. A glimmer of hope in the midst of an extreme storm, responding to the demands of the communities protesting outside the summit.
André Vieira e Sebastián Soto, teleSUR, Brasil.
And to stay on topic on climate change, we go to Cuba. President Miguel Díaz-Canel expressed his gratitude to his Colombian counterpart, Gustavo Petro, for the humanitarian aid sent to those affected by Hurricane Melissa. During the National Defense Council meeting, the authorities also reported that 11 million of the 74.2 million contemplated in a United Nations action plan were conceived thanks to contributions from nations such as Germany, Norway, and Canada. In addition, the President noted that the toughest stage is now beginning, characterized by the understandable desperation of the population in the face of the persistent lack of basic services. He also emphasized that to guarantee medical assistance, especially in areas that are difficult to access, 33 medical surgical brigades remain deployed in several eastern provinces.
I believe that the information could be supplemented with information from the Deputy Minister of Foreign Trade about the donations from Colombia, for which we are very grateful to the Colombian people, their government, and our brother President Petro for this gesture with the eastern provinces.
And now we have a short break coming up, but first remember you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you'll find news in different formats, news updates, and much more. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. The multi-platform teleSUR and the Brazilian media outlet Brazil 247 signed an institutional cooperation agreement to strengthen information integration and the exchange of journalistic content. Patricia Villegas, president of teleSUR, and Leonardo Atush, founder and president of Brazil 247, signed the agreement that lays the groundwork for collaboration in institutional cooperation activities, technical assistance and research under the premise of promoting an independent Latin American narrative and disseminating verified information on regional and global issues. The agreement will initially have a duration of 2 years, during which joint projects, studies and publications are planned that will contribute to a critical and contextualized view of what is happening in the world. And in other news, the U.S. Department of War confirmed a new attack in the Caribbean that resulted in the death of 3 people as part of Washington's aggression in the region under the pretext of supposed fight against drug trafficking. U.S. Secretary of War Pete Hegseth announced on social media that acting on the direct order of President Donald Trump, a lethal attack was carried out against a vessel in international waters identified as property of a designated terrorist organization used for drug trafficking. According to Hegseth, the offensive resulted in the death of 3 male drug terrorists who were on board the ship with no U.S. casualties. He also emphatically warned that these attacks will continue until what he considers to be harassment against the U.S. people. And also the president of Venezuela, Nicolás Maduro Moros, emphasized that despite all the aggression from the U.S. government, Venezuela will continue to work towards the integral development of all sectors of Venezuelan society. In this regard, during his visit, the head of state reiterated the call for direct democratic participation through a new consultation on November 23rd. The objective of holding this day of discussion on these projects is to guarantee the active participation of the people in the selection of commune projects. Therefore, President Nicolás Maduro also instructed the members of the Bolivarian Armed Forces of Venezuela to accompany the people's power in this debate process and to reinforce the synergy between the military, the people and the police. The president also praised the country's defense system as the fundamental shield to combat and neutralize the constant foreign threats and attacks that seek to disturb the peace of the people.
They believe that life is a bad Hollywood movie where they, the supremacists, Rambo, they all win and we are always the bad guys. They are the good guys. With all that they do, they bomb, they despise, they kill. And always the Latinos, the Mexican, the Colombians, the Venezuelans, the Caribbean, the Africans, we are the bad guys in their movies. They can have their bad movies.
The Mexican Ministry of Economy has announced the conclusion of the consultation and dialogue roundtables with productive actors held in preparation for the revision of the trade agreement between Mexico, the United States and Canada, is scheduled for next year. The working groups provided spaces for direct dialogue to identify the priority issues that Mexico will promote in the review of the regional agreement. As a complement to the sectoral meetings, the Ministry of Economy distributed a questionnaire to gain a deeper understanding of the proposals from the private sector and the federal entities. The response was overwhelming to date. Over 2,000 responses have been received from state consultations and about 500 from direct representatives of the productive sectors that make up the Mexican economy. And also in the United States, the Federal Aviation Administration, FAA, announced a 10% reduction in air traffic at 40 high-traffic airports starting on Friday as a result of the partial shutdown of the federal government. Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy justified the reduction in flights on the grounds of air traffic control safety and stated that these measures are being implemented to prevent the situation from worsening. For his part, the FAA Administrator Brian Bedford indicated that the reduction in scheduled capacity is appropriate in order to relieve pressure on air traffic controllers. Since the beginning of the partial shutdown of the federal government, approximately 13,000 air traffic controllers and at least 50,000 port security agents have stopped receiving their salaries. And we have a second short break coming up. Before, we invite you to visit our Facebook page at teleSUR English. There you'll be able to watch our top stories, special live coverage and much more. Follow our page and activate the notification button to stay up to date on the world's most recent events. Final short break. We'll be right back. Welcome back to From the South. Palestine denounces at least 340 attacks by the occupation forces and Israeli settlers against farm workers during the olive harvest. The Colonization and World Resistance Commission explained that the documented attacks ranged from physical violence and arrests to restrictions on freedom of movement, preventing access to land, intimidation, and even direct shootings. Most of these attacks were recorded in the governorates of Ramallah with 107 cases, Nablus with 94, and Hebron with 38 cases. The authority confirms the increasing attacks on farms from 136 in 2022 to 340 in 2025, reflecting a systematic persecution of farmers, so they call on the international community to take effective action to protect the Palestinian people. And the World Health Organization announced a plan to restore vital medical care, including vaccinations for thousands of children in the Gaza Strip. The initiative will begin next week and will focus on serving approximately 44,000 children who have been deprived of essential health services for almost 2 years. At the same time, and in support of this massive campaign, the World Health Organization is committed to reconstructing the healthcare infrastructure. The organization specified that 20 health centers that were damaged or destroyed are being actively rehabilitated in order to restore the healthcare network in Gaza. And we go to Jakarta, Indonesia. About 54 people are reported injured after explosions at a high school mosque. In this scenario, witnesses reported hearing multiple explosions during Friday prayers. Police forces said that some of those affected suffered burns and moderate injuries. However, the ages of the affected individuals are still unknown. At a press conference, National Police Chief Listio Sigit stated that they have identified a suspect and that an officer team is investigating the possible motive for this incident. And the Iranian government condemned Israeli attacks against southern Lebanon. The Iranian Foreign Ministry described the Israeli attacks as a flagrant aggression against national sovereignty and territorial integrity, against peace and international security. It also emphasized that the planning and execution of these criminal attacks are supported by the United States, which once again demonstrates the criminal, terrorist, and hegemonically aggressive nature of Israel. Meanwhile, the Iranian government reaffirmed its solidarity with Lebanon in the face of these criminal aggressions. And in Lebanon, a new Israeli attack leaves one dead and at least 8 injured in the south of the country on Thursday. According to the Emergency Operations Center of the Ministry of Public Health, Israeli aircraft bombed several towns in southern Lebanon, violating the November 2024 ceasefire agreement between the Islamic resistance movement Hezbollah and Israel. For its part, the movement warned that Israel's goal is to dismantle any resistance capability and weaken the Lebanese state, and reaffirm its commitment to Lebanon's sovereignty and its right to self-defense. Meanwhile, Lebanese authorities denounced that these new attacks constitute a flagrant and serious violation of the ceasefire agreement negotiated last November. And in South Korea, at least 3 dead were reported after a 60-meter tower collapsed during demolition work at a decommissioned thermoelectric power plant in the city of Ulsan. According to authorities, 9 people were working on site when the boiler tower collapsed, and 5 individuals remained trapped under the rubble, including 2 who have not yet been located. The plant was decommissioned in 2021 after 40 years of operation, and authorities indicated that the boiler tower, one of the 3 on the site, had been weakened while being prepared for demolition. In this context, at early hours of Friday, the search was temporarily suspended due to concerns about the instability of the debris. And Colombia prepares its best steps for the 7th edition of the International Dance Biennial. Every 2 years, the city of Cali welcomes dancers from all over Colombia and other countries to host the International Dance Biennial. In this edition, which will be held from November 11th to 17th, over 4,000 national and international dance professionals will participate. The agenda confirms the attendance of 7 countries with complete companies, as well as exhibitions with dancers from indigenous peoples. This celebration, which began in 2013, brings together all genres, folkloric, contemporary and classical, to promote cultural exchange between local and international groups, as well as exchange between artists from different dance genres. And also, Mexico recovers a key piece of its national history by repatriating an 11th and 18th century map. The document, entitled Villa de Santa Fe, New Mexico, was delivered to the National Archives. After 9 years of negotiations, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs managed to recover the document, which was in the United States due to illegal trafficking. The map is a tangible testament to history, presenting data on water resources, indigenous communities, and mountain ranges. The restitution is the result of the work of the Mexican government and indigenous communities, which shows their commitment to preserving their history, strengthening cultural identity, and protecting the cultural heritage of Latin America. And like this, we have come to the end of this news brief. Remember, you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. Also join us on social media. We are on Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok as well. For Telesur English, I'm Alejandra Garcia. Thank you for watching.